Hello, everyone. I hope you're all well. As you know, my name is Paul. Welcome to another episode on my Nutrient Nirvana YouTube channel. Today, I've got a guest with me, a very interesting lady, a multifaceted healer called Jules, and I'll be bringing her on in a moment. Before I do, just a quick reminder, I'm the owner of a herbs and supplements company called Nutrient Nirvana, and I help people maintain, improve, or recover their health with nutrients. But what this channel is about is exploring all facets of healing and health. That can be diet, nutrition, trauma therapy, frequency devices, healing in nature, fasting, you name it. I want to explore it all. Now, recently, I've been thinking that there's too many healers in my experience that reject any other mode of healing and claim my way is the only way. And I think this is profoundly wrong and very reductive, particularly given the challenging times that we're living in. You know, we're being attacked with the food, the water supply, environmentally, toxins, trauma, EMFs, you name it. So really, we should all be joining forces and bringing our specific talents to the healing world. That's what I think anyway. Anyway, rant over. I'm going to bring on Jules now. Hello, Jules.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. And I was just listening to your intro thinking, yes, full yes, I fully agree.
Good.
Yes.
I've been, you know what it's like when you're going through social media and you're scrolling, etc., and you read various articles written by healers, and I find that they're kind of giving us their mode of healing, but they're also saying that's all wrong. You know, you must heal yourself with diet, supplements don't help, blah 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 blah, and vice versa, whatever. And I just think it's all wrong. You know, given that. What we're currently experiencing in the world in terms of all the different ways that they're attacking us, I think we should all be joining forces. And because we're at the end of the day, we're all individuals, aren't we? So we've all got our own, you know, kind of specific needs and requirements. And one size doesn't fit all, you know, unless you're talking about allopathic medicine, of course. But anyway, so yes, so I've been going through your website. It's a very good website, very, very interesting. I found your bio very interesting because, as I understand it, you were working in the corporate world for quite a long time, and then you took a year off to heal, and then you started training in healing. So perhaps you could give us your background information on that.
Sure. So I was working in things like banking and internet design companies. And whilst it was very lucrative and very profitable and we had a blast socially, it got to a point in my life where I was experiencing a lot of thoughts and emotions that I'd probably been suppressing for quite so many years, and it was all like like a pressure cooker. It was all kind of bubbling up and getting to the point where I was struggling to function on a day-to-day basis. So it became quite apparent that I, sort of needed to do something to kind of embrace what was happening within me. So I took a year to kind of go through like talking therapy. And it just changed the course of my life, really, because I became more open to other areas and modalities of healing. Because typically, when you're kind of brought into this environment, you're told the doctors is the way to go medically and the psychiatrist is the way to go mentally. And often they have a specific school of thought, which is not very conducive to what I would consider long-term healing. So the doctor was saying to me, oh, I'm going to give you some antidepressants. And I knew from my own experience with my dad taking all those sorts of things that actually I just didn't want to go there. There must be another way. That's my mindset. There always is another way. So I found a talking therapy, and then she suggested, have you ever tried meditation or yoga? And I was like, no, what is this? What is this thing you speak of? And I started going to yoga, and I just found it had some really profound calming effects on my central nervous system, which is what I was struggling with. And then I discovered, meditation, and kind of went down this sort of journey of all this, what was considered alternative back then, this is 20 odd years ago, considered alternative healing routes, determined not to take tablets to suppress things even further. That just didn't make sense in my head. And it just changed everything. I ended up thinking, all about all these existential questions. Where am I going with my life? This all seems completely irrelevant now, doing this what I would call superficial work. It all felt a bit superficial. And I just thought, yeah, this is something I want to help. It's helped me, and I've learned a lot from it. And I ended up just going where the universe directed, basically.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And synchronicities, because I've got a very similar story to you, really. I used to be an estate agent when I was young, did that for a few years. And one day I happened to be at a family gathering, and I was listening to my aunt at the time talk about what she did for a living. And she was the head of a pediatric unit in a hospital. And the kids that she looked after had terminal cancer. And her son had died, my cousin had died in the same ward that she worked in from a brain tumor. And at the time I found that story, it just hit me, bang. And it was like a sea change in me overnight, literally. And I left the estate agents and became a nurse for a few years.
Okay.
I really don't regret it. I should apologise, by the way, sorry. I did warn you before the video, you can maybe hear some cat noises. I've got a 1-year-old cat at the moment that's on heat and is attacking my feet. So if you hear yelps of pain throughout the interview, it's nothing to do with you. Sorry about that. We'll try and soldier on. I'll try and soldier on regardless.
Okay. Well, if there's any blood, I suggest you stop.
Yeah, there has been blood before. Blood has been drawn, believe me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not easy. So going through your website, you offer many types of healing. You're a Reiki master. You do something called, let me get this right, quantum reprocessing hypnosis, which I really like the sound of. That looks very interesting. And also something called munay-ki. Now, that's something I've never heard of before, and I'll be asking you about that later. Should we look at quantum reprocessing hypnosis first?
Sure.
That sounds fascinating. Now, does this incorporate post-life regression?
Yes. Yeah, there's many different areas of hypnosis that you can delve into. And really, the journey that you can take a client over is limited by your own thinking, because anything in my head, everything is possible and anything is possible. And the term QRP, which is quantum reprocessing, came out of a conversation I was having, because there's quite a negative connotation with hypnosis, hypnotherapists. People just think you're going to do something and they're going to start quacking like a chicken or something like that. The artists on the telly haven't really done it a good justice. So I was trying to come up with a name that was separate from that, which basically prevented that kind of like, oh, they're going to put me in a space and I can't do anything, I'm powerless, because it's completely the opposite, actually. And when I talk about quantum, it's like understanding that when I, through my meditation practice, that there is a space that I can locate within myself that is completely blank, like it's a nothingness state. And for me, it's like the space of all potential. It's where everything is created. And the munay-ki comes from sort of shamanic practices in South America, where the shamans there believe that everything that we see on this planet is a physical manifestation of our subconscious minds and our conscious creation. So I kind of termed QRP as that sort of fact that we can go to zero, we can go to this space through the hypnosis journey, where there is no sense of character, no sense of behavior, to this point of the quantum field, in effect, I feel, is what we're accessing, to be able to understand what is it that we've created in our physical bodies now, which is the symptom, and how can I look at that, undo it, resolve it, and therefore create the potential of the future that I want to experience. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, definitely. Okay, so let's start with past life regression, because that's something I have personally experienced. Now, I had this done on YouTube, funnily enough, with a lady called Maria Wheatley. I don't know if you've come across her at all. Yeah. She trained with Dolores Cannon. It was a very, very interesting experience. It lived with me for days afterwards. And I wouldn't say I was traumatized by it as such. Just to qualify that, I was immediately sent into a World War I battlefield. So So it was a very real experience. In terms of, you know, I felt the heat of the bullets whizzing past my head. It was like I was literally there. Looking back on it now, I'm in between two possible outcomes of what it could have meant. So I'm not sure if it was actually my past life or whether I was tapping into the collective consciousness or Akashic records, whatever you want to call it. What would you say about that?
She's beautiful.
Very
Well,
pretty. Yeah.
I've also started to look at the words past life, because I kind of come to the understanding at the moment that there's many alternate lives living out, and that man and woman have created this linear time frame of things, so it's before and after, but actually I feel everything's kind of all happening now. We've got the multiverse and different galaxies. So is that a life that's happening before, or is it something that's happening now that you've just accessed across a different space and time continuum, if that makes sense? Some people that I spoke to in the hypnosis training that I did were unsure whether their experiences were actually real experiences, or whether the subconscious mind gave them some sort of context to the issues that they needed to release. So, like, for example, if you were in a war and you got, I don't know, obviously very military based, under control, under mind control to kind of go and do things, whether you had been double crossed by, your soldier friend there, had the subconscious mind given you all of that context to be able to help you understand that you've got issues around trust, for example, in this life. Does that make sense? So
it does, yeah. I mean, at the time I spoke to Maria afterwards because for 2 or 3 days after the experience, I felt quite unwell, in terms of literal symptoms coming out. It was like a detox. It was very odd.
Yeah.
She said that quite often past life regressions that involve a war situation often alludes or points to family situations.
Right. Okay.
And well, still to this day, really, I suppose, my family situation is kind of a bit like a war.
Round,
So yeah, and it has been for many years. So perhaps that's how I should interpret what I experienced, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, some sessions can be like that. So it's almost like the subconscious mind, as I say, is giving you a scene to be able to understand what is bothering you internally. But some sessions, for example, not alternate life regressions, but some sessions whereby somebody's wanted to go back to their childhood and face something, they go back to being a 6-year-old person in exactly the same situation. So that is a memory triggered by the subconscious mind. But whether that's a memory in alternate life, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I've experienced it myself. Because we've only got the context of this life, it's very difficult to say, okay, well, that's definitely a life I've had. But some people can access that information anyway. But like I say, it could just be the subconscious mind has given that scenario for you to understand a context of something that's bothering you. Like you said, your family life, the family is a bit of a battleground. So you've been given that to help you understand what it feels like to be in a battleground and to experience that, because it's the conscious mind's perception of what's playing out subconsciously.
That's a brilliant explanation. That makes complete sense. Thank you for that. Just one extra sort of caveat on that was that when I was being regressed, Maria's technique was to kind of get me into the state of mind, I suppose. So I had to walk down a staircase with a red carpet, and then I had to picture the room that I was walking down into, which was a very vivid experience. I did that really well. And the strangest thing was, the day after I did that, I happened to be watching a film. It was a 1970s horror film. I think it was Oliver Reed. And I saw that room in the film, and it was to the tiniest detail, the same room. It was just so weird.
Some things just are so fascinatingly weird, isn't it? I did a hypnotherapy session with somebody that I was training with, and we just sort of, to help us practice and do case studies. So we said we'd swap sessions. And she said, I really want to try. I'd come up with this thing called manifesting, like timeline manifestation therapy, something where you wish to, create a certain life for yourself. It's like looking into the future. What is it that I want? How am I going to get to that point? And it's quite a nicely thought out process. And she wanted to experience that. And I said to her, like, what is it that you want to bring in? She said, well, I want to move and I want to do this and I want to, get this. But the main thing was moving. So as we were going through the session, she was hit with image upon image about what this future house was going to look like. 3 weeks later, she just went to view some houses and she walked in. She was like, I've been here before. And then she went, shit, it's the one in my, so.
Wow.
We're accessing something in these states that the brainwave state that you need to get in for hypnotherapy to be really fulfilling and successful is the theta brainwave state. So if we think about the beta is when we're really alert, now we're having a conversation, we're both needing to be awake and conversive and listening and receptive. And then you've got the alpha state, which is a little bit more relaxing, could be reading a book or just chilling, listening to some music or something. But theta, the state that we get into for this, is that kind of dream-like state between awakeness and sleep, like deep sleep. And from my own experience of meditation, when I'm in that space, you can access quite a lot of information. People do access, like you say, the Akashic or, those kind of records, and you can access information beyond, your day-to-day life in those spaces.
Yeah, the universe is speaking to us all the time.
Yeah.
That's something that
we're calling in these experiences based on how we are. So, for example, if I can relate back to, my own childhood, just very briefly, until you wish to delve into it further. But, I had this level of distrust in people for so long. So I would continuously, I didn't know it was there, it was subconscious. So I would continually invite people in that proved to me that I couldn't trust them. Because it was like a vibration thing. The universe was saying, well, this is what's at play within your, so this is what you're going to get. So you have to sort of heal these areas to be able to attract in.
Is that, yeah, I get you there. So is that kind of like the same thing as, now I don't want to upset anyone by saying this, but I've noticed in my time, because I'd said before I worked in nursing, so I used to work with a lot of women, basically. And I noticed that there were some women that I got to know on the job that seemed to go from one abusive relationship to another abusive relationship, and the pattern just repeated and repeated and repeated. I guess really that's the same kind of thing as what you're talking about there.
It can be. If you've got such a low level of worthiness or really poor boundaries, or you've been bullied as a child and you just you've got that kind of trauma, if you like, within your system where you've not been dealt with very lovingly, then you're kind of believing that that's what you deserve subconsciously. And then, you're kind of, and also because you're used to being perhaps dealt with that way, when someone comes along, it's like a familiar energy and a dynamic that you can cope with because you've already had it, and therefore it perpetuates the cycle.
So how do you break that cycle with your therapy?
Well, in a session like that, for example, I would definitely go back to sort of childhood areas where perhaps something had happened, which then perpetuated the belief that one wasn't worthy of, a fully proper, loving, safe relationship, or having a look at what it was that was playing out. Sometimes people consciously can say, okay, well, this happened when I was young and I know it's the cause of this, but then you go into the subconscious mind and it's completely unrelated. But that one thing would trigger a pattern and a causation of events, which would then create a belief that you were a certain way, or a belief that you were bad and you only deserve this behavior, for example, or that you did something wrong, therefore you deserve it, and that then perpetuates and can then magnetize, people into your life, which then perpetuate that belief. And then it reinforces it, it's like a hamster wheel going round and round in circles. So,
Yes.
But there is a way of breaking free from these patterns, absolutely. And it's about getting inquisitive, and it's about being willing to just go into that space and see what's there, because it's really quite profound, as you know from your own experience.
Yeah, absolutely,
quite profound.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about phobias. Okay. I've got a terrible fear of flying. I had a a really bad flight once coming back from Alicante to England. Sheet lightning, a horrific storm, flew right through the centre of it. Plane was dropping, bang, struck by lightning. Everyone thought they were going to die. And then a year later, I got back on a plane and I was terrified and wanted to hide under the chair. And I haven't flown since. And that was 15 years ago. So is it possible to reverse that kind of deep-seated trauma?
Yes.
Phobia?
Yes, absolutely.
Help us
It
out.
may take a couple of sessions, for example. It might, it might not. But I've had people that are petrified of bees and snakes, like they literally cannot think of a bee, or they hear a buzz and they just dive for cover. That have kind of got to the point where, okay, they're not going to sit there and let them land on them, but they can be around them and they're not dreading summer because of the effect of all the insects. But yeah, absolutely. I personally feel that everything is possible. Anything is possible. Everything can be undone, because and it's understandable that you would, your body would tense in that way, because it's had an experience that, quite frankly, questioned its survival. So now you're in a seat again thinking, is this, am I going to die here? So the body will experience something and it will hold on residue of energy or trauma, for want of a better word, and then it will then create some sort of tenseness, and then the mind starts creating a story. Whereas if you were able to sit on that plane, notice the tenseness, see what was going on in the head, catch the story before it became this massive, oh my God, we're all going to die, Armageddon style-y, and then talk yourself and your body down, like, it's okay, body, we're in a safe space, everything is okay. The pilot's very, that sort of thing. But often the stories that we have running are the reality that we experience as well. So if you're getting on that plane and you're thinking it's going to be a horrific flight, I'm just going to be scared the whole time, then that's going to be what you experience, is that horrificness of not wanting to move or even go on the plane.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked as to how deep rooted that trauma was in me when I got on a plane again, and it was embarrassing at the end of the day, because there was, I was amongst about, I don't know, 100 other people on the plane, and as soon as the engines came on before you're about to take off, that was it. That kind of sent me over the edge, and I went up to the stewardess at the front of the plane and said, I'm so sorry, I've got to get off this plane, I can't do it. And she said, well, if you do that, then we've got to cancel the flight or postpone it, because we've got to get your luggage off, blah, blah, blah. Go and speak to the pilot, he'll reassure you. So I did. It was an EasyJet plane, and I walked into the cockpit, and it was nothing like what I was expecting. There was just two guys strapped in like that. The dashboard was slightly bigger than my Mini Coopers, and they were like, "You'll be all right, mate." And I was like, "Oh, okay, safest way to travel, blah blah blah." And okay, I said, "I've got to do this. I can't inconvenience these people."
Yeah.
So I walked back to the plane, to my seat, and as I did, the captain came on the tannoy and said, "We've got a nervous flyer, everyone. Give him a round of applause." Oh. I wanted the ground to swallow me.
Oh no.
Yeah. So anyway, I made the flight, but it was a trauma, and I haven't got back on since. But it's limited my travel kind of potentialities, So I would like to get over it. Maybe I'll have to book in with you or something to see what you can do to me on that front, because it's quite frustrating.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Brilliant. Okay, let's talk about the I know I want to say this correctly, munay-ki. Am I saying that right? Munay-ki. I've never heard this before. It's as I understand it, it's an ancient Peruvian healing therapy, but it's quite new over here. Is that right?
Relatively, yeah. So you've got a lot of people sort of teaching it. It's basically rites of energetic imprint. So the shamans in South America have many different modalities for healing, and I was trained with the munay-ki using specific stones that are used and programmed to work with you, and you just basically and you basically just move it in certain directions, move it energetically in certain directions, different phases around the body, depending on what it is and what it which area you're focusing on. I did the training with a friend of mine. It was quite some time ago, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't really used it since, because I did another type of training with a shikapa, which is like a leaf rattle, And that's, I feel more connected with that than I did with the munay-ki. But the rites itself are quite interesting in terms of, you know, blockages it can clear. And I remember doing the training with my friend and just feeling really like light for weeks and weeks afterwards, just thinking, right, I haven't done anything. And then I realized, oh, I've done this clearing. And again, so that the shamans, as I say, they are quite attuned to feeling into where there's blockages and where there's, I don't want to say negative or positive energy, because I think that gives different connotations, but what they say is heavier or lighter, you know, denser energy, which is a bit more thick, like treacle, which you can feel, or a bit more refined, which is lighter energy. So what they typically do in those practices is clear the denser, the heavier energy, the stuff where things might be stuck in the body or in the mind. And the munay-ki was a part of that sort of understanding. More about the mind-body connection, actually, was what I really took away from that, was that this intricate connective system, which in some modalities, like you were saying earlier at the intro, like someone will say, oh no, it's just this, and it's just about nutrition, but that's just looking at the biology. That's not looking at the emotions or the spiritual or you know, anything else. So I think for a holistic approach, you do need to have various different practices, because like you say, not one size fits all, and there are so many different routes to healing now, you know. That it's good to incorporate many of them. So I still have the Sami stones, and I still use them if I feel that it's something that the shakapa, you know, need, like you know, the leaf rattle needs a bit of assistance with. But
so is the Sami stone like a crystal?
It's like a hard rock stone, yeah. So you know, stones themselves, I mean, crystal healing is not new, is it?
No.
But also, you know, in the shamanic world, they honor the stone people. You know, they understand that stones have consciousness and can communicate, and also therefore have healing properties, as well as the plant people, for example. You know, the trees, which also are also part of our healing. You know, nature is very healing, isn't it? You know.
Absolutely, yeah. So how important is it, do you think, that the healer themselves has to be in a good place to be able to heal someone else? I spoke to, have you come across Mark Bayersky on your travels at all?
No,
He's quite famous internationally as a healer, and he works with crystals. And I asked him this question, and he said that's a very good question. He said I've lost count of the amount of times that I've watched a healing session, and the person receiving the healing is on the bed or whatever, and the healer comes in, and I notice straight away the healer doesn't seem right. They look a bit edgy or a bit depressed or nervous or whatever it might be. They carry out the healing session, and then at the end of it, he says he notices that the person who's received the healing looks worse off than they did to start with, and the healer themselves looks better because they've received the energy from the person that they were trying to heal. So
right.
How important do you think it is that the actual healer needs to be in a good state of mind and health?
I think it's quite important. However, I'm also understanding that when you're in a space of healing, say Reiki, for example, you're very much taught that you're not giving your own energy, that you are to be empty, that you are channeling from the cosmos source.
Right.
You know, so you're channeling, which is why some healers do get that extra boost and probably look better than. But ultimately, if in that situation, I'd say that the healer took it all and perhaps didn't pass it on properly. You know, but I do think it's important. You know, because especially with hypnotherapy, you know, some people will tell me stories about, you know, what's happened to them, and some of them are just, you know, it's really heartbreaking. And if you fall apart in a session and start crying because you are not in a space of clarity and be able to hold space for them, they're not going to do what they need to do, which is let go of it, because they're going to start thinking, I can't say this to this person because they're not strong enough to hold me in this process. And also, you know, if you're not in the right headspace or in the right body space, so to speak, like you say, how do you know what's going on with you isn't going to be passed on? But really, you know, they're coming to you for something that they need. You know, they deserve you to be in tip-top position. You know, so I'm not saying, you know, there's been situations where I had to take a break for 6 months and just go, you know what, I'm going through my own process here. I want to make sure I'm out the other side of it before I even go anywhere else, because otherwise you're not really giving them the best of what they need.
Yeah.
Which is yourself, fully present, fully have the capacity to be there for them, to explore what they need. Otherwise, that what are they coming to you for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I totally agree. Yeah, so let's talk about meditation and music, because I happen to know that you play a bit of guitar. You're a fellow guitarista like myself.
Yes.
So I've never meditated in my life, not once ever, and I've lost count of the amount of people that have said, Paul, you need to meditate. The way I view it is, because every night I usually end up noodling away on the guitar, and I find that to be my form of meditation, if you like. I mean, would you agree with that, or do you think that meditation is something else? Or
no, for me, the definition of meditation is purely being 100 and complete, 1,000% completely present in any activity. Washing up can be meditative. Just going to get the washing down from the line can be, as long as you're fully present, you're in the body, you're aware of every single function that you're doing, you're present. There's this really beautiful picture where you've got, like, it's a cartoon where you've got two characters and it splits in half, and you've got this person going for a walk and this person going for a walk, and it says mindful, as in it's got a speech bubble, and you've got all this stuff like they're thinking about the house, the car, this, that, and then the other one, or mindful, which is where they're just viewing the landscape. That's a meditation in itself. I don't think people just need to sit cross-legged and om it out, but there is benefits to that too.
Yeah,
you can 100% lose your ego in music creation. 100%. If you get a good riff going, or you just it's repetitive notes, and you're kind of doing something which basically distracts your conscious mind to find that sense of peace. And 100% music.
Well, has your own playing helped you heal in any way at all?
And your own voice, actually, because there's a particular frequency and resonance with your own voice.
Right.
So do you sing as well?
No.
You just play.
No, not really. No, I can sing in tune, but I just sound rubbish. But yeah, I'm not tone deaf or anything, but I just like playing the guitar.
Yeah. And how do you feel when you start playing it and you kind of get into that space?
Oh. So this is what I really want to be doing. I want to just play the guitar, and it's not always possible. I used to teach guitar a few years ago, taught it for many years, and I really, really enjoyed that. But I couldn't take it any further than what I did. I had a little guitar orchestra with adults and kids, and I used to teach 6 days a week in schools and at a craft fair and stuff, and I loved it. But unfortunately, it wasn't going to get me anywhere in life, really. So, and then of course that all came to an end with COVID. So I went on to I taught on Zoom for a little while, but I just found that impossible. It's just you have to be in the room with someone to really be able to help them properly, I think, anyway. So yeah, miles away. So is there anything else that we haven't covered today that you offer people that you'd like to talk about, Jules?
Not really. I think, the hypnotherapeutic process is quite, as I said, it's quite profound. There's the capacity for understanding any limited thinking. There's the capacity for understanding why you might be behaving a certain way, or why certain things trigger you. And for me at the moment, that's like my favorite default modality to go to. I'm happy to work with the shikapa and things like that, and that involves people lying down and working through the energy and actually singing lullabies to them in Peruvian tongue. So it's quite relaxing as well. But really, for me at the moment, because of what I've noticed, I suppose, with people I've worked with and my own development in that area, I just see such amazing results, and I just think this is where it's at at the moment, without discrediting any other modality, because I think all of them have a benefit.
Absolutely.
Especially if someone's got lots of different areas to look at and whatnot.
Actually, one thing we haven't discussed before we close are children. So because you're an ICU Academy teacher, that's right, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So that relates to therapy for children?
Yes, you could call it that. It's a way of getting them right. So as children, toddlers, if you say to them, can you do this? And they just go, no. They just flat out no. They know what they want. They know what they don't want. And as we grow, we get a little bit impacted by our own experiences, you know, how our environment teaches us, how our parents teach us, schools, how we internalize information and situations. And that can kind of lead us away from our internal navigation tool that says, no, I'm not doing that. And so the stuff with the children really is about putting a blindfold on them. And then through that, we do a lot of fun and a lot of activities and exercises, which help them refine their inner compass and their intuition, which basically helps them understand more how to listen to that as opposed to the world and the wider audience. Because as you know, and I know, you know, we're fed a lot of information that isn't actually correct. And it's a minefield to kind of go down those routes and go, you know, I'm sure you've been through 3,000 plus rabbit holes over the past amount of years, you know, and that can be quite tricky. But if you've got this internal sense of what feels right and what doesn't feel right, then you're more likely to go with that, as opposed to someone saying to you, you've got to take this because it's good for you, you know, so to speak. So it's about that. And I also go through the space of teaching them kind of meditations, visualizations. We can do light hypnotherapy journeys with them, but it really is about, and some children actually, they go on to see without their eyes. You know, they actually go on to see.
Yes, I've seen that. That's fascinating. I think they sort of lose that ability about the age of 11 years old, but I've seen videos of these kids and they're reading books and they're communicating to people what's around the room, and they're completely blindfolded. And I've heard that when they're asked how can you do this, they say, oh, we tune into our inner light, which is amazing, isn't it? It's beautiful.
They're using what is called the third eye. I think it should be called the first eye, because that's the most powerful one in my eyes. But yeah, they're using this, accessing this information here. And it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating. Some of them don't develop that, you know, not every child develops that. Some of them just develop a knowing. So one of the girls I work with, she was in the car with her dad, and she said to her dad, "Oh, watch out, Dad! There's some sort of building and brick wall there." And she said, "Oh, there's a red car coming around the corner, Dad." And as he turned, there was a red car, and he was just like, "How?" And she said, "I just know." Wow. You know, and it's using that sense. So that's really, and actually, it's quite important for the young ones who also have had experiences, rather than wait to an adult to go through healing, you know, to lighten the load for them now, because the more you do that, they just don't carry it with them into their adulthood, you know.
Well, I think perhaps this ability that they have, perhaps we all once had it many moons ago, and gradually over time it's kind of, you know, left us for whatever reason, who knows. But yeah, that's what I believe anyway.
We know much more than we think we know. Often you know, I like to call it a monkey mind, you know, can be incredibly distracting from our inner knowing. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. That's been brilliant, Jules. I've really enjoyed this. Where can my viewers find out more about you and get in touch and receive one of your therapies?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So there is a website, ilightme.co.uk, which is ilight.co.uk, with all of the contact details on there. And even if people just want to have a chat and say, an intro call and just find out a little bit more, you know, you're more than welcome to contact me and just book that in as well. Just have an understanding, because, you know, sometimes people can be very fearful of going into that space. As I say, it's a very vulnerable place, and you need to be able to trust who you're working with. So yeah, I'm happy to have intro calls as well.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much, Jules, for sharing your time and knowledge with me today and the viewers. Please like, share and subscribe, everyone, and I'll be back again with another show. Cheers, Jules.
Cheers.